Hi everyone. I had the opportunity to sit down with Adi Shankar, who is the creator of the Netflix series Guardians of Justice, and talk to him about a number of things. We spoke about the process of making something like Guardians of Justice, what he's thinking when he's making something like Guardians of Justice, his ideas about how media programs society to think in certain ways, and how those ideas informed the Guardians of Justice. We also talked about his personal history and his experiences growing up in the middle of the 90s, surrounded by American entertainment, and how that inspired the kind of work that he has put into Guardians of Justice. If you have not seen the Guardians of Justice, it's a series available on Netflix, and I promise you that you have never really seen anything like it, and it may very well end up blowing your mind. And now on to my conversation with Adi Shankar. So, how have you been? It's been a while since we last talked.
Oh man, it's been crazy. It's been crazy. I've been really good. The show came out obviously, and that was like a paradigm shift for my life. And
You're talking about Guardians of Justice.
The Guardians of Justice, yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
then I've been kind of juggling that with two other things that are currently in production.
Okay.
So
So,
I've been good, man. I'm really blessed. I feel blessed. That's what it is. I'm just like, wow, this is awesome. Like my dreams came true. This is dope.
yeah, seems
You
like
know
it.
what I mean? Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
living.
So,
I'm living the part of the story where the dreams come true.
yeah, part of the story. Hopefully that's the bulk of the story, or at least the
Yes,
whole story.
it, totally, and not some like montage before the crime. Before the shooting happens.
Yeah. So before, because we are on that topic, do you want to give us a brief overview of how you got to be where you are today? What has been the journey like?
Oh, dude, I don't even know how to make it brief, bro. It's crazy. I mean, my life is. I've been doing this for like over 10 years, right? Like the Gray came out 10 years ago, and that was like so I've been doing this for like over 10 years. I'm 37,
Okay.
and I'm from where you're from. I was born in India. So
Hmm.
the whole journey is just insane. And I don't know how to like really summarize it, condense it in a way that doesn't provoke 50 more questions.
No, it's okay to
Um,
provoke 50 more questions. I'm saying, like,
yeah,
okay, so let me put it this way. How old were you when you went over there?
to America to like
Yeah,
live by
yeah,
myself,
yeah.
16.
16. Okay.
Yeah.
And how old were you when you decided to take on this line of work? Or did you go to America with the
I'm
intention of pursuing this line of work?
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. This was like and my parents were like, "No, what are you talking about?" Like it was more like, "Hey, we suspect you want to do something creative." And I'm like, I mean, yeah, is that a problem? Like, and they were like, "You'll never get," it was some
Yeah.
like
The whole Indian
fear
parent thing.
logic. Right. But okay, that's what's weird. I didn't understand that this is an Indian parent thing. I thought this was just my parents lived in a vacuum and they were doing this to me. So like they're gonna hate me saying this, but there was like a while where I like thought these were like the worst people I ever met because I only watched like American
Got
movies,
it.
right? And then you're watching American movies and you're seeing how like American parents are like, yes, honey, you should try it out. And then I go home and like my parents are behaving like very differently, and I'm like, who are these people? Like, what? Yeah,
Got it. So,
yeah.
how's your family's reaction now that your shows are on Netflix and that you've made some big stuff like Castlevania and Guardians of Justice and stuff? Do you get like
Well,
we never thought that you will get here, that sort of stuff, or do you think, or are they mostly saying we always knew that you will make it?
I mean, neither. Neither. I think my entire like way of operating
Hmm.
just is confusing. I mean, look, I love my parents. They're super supportive. And they're like very nice, wonderful people, who really just gave me the tools in life, in just kind of how they trained me and coached me. They gave me like these valuable tools that ultimately allow me to be an effective human being. And I'm totally grateful to them for everything. There wasn't like one singular reaction that I got from them. It was like, at first it was like, I remember when I first started making a movie, they were like, whoa, you're making a movie. This is crazy. And then they're like, okay, well, I mean, one's like a hobby, right? Like, or it's like a cool adventure. Okay, cool. Is it out of your system? And then it's like another thing. And then all of a sudden, like, everyone's reaction changed after there was like a big, massive hit, And then I think once I started all of a sudden walking around with like face paint on, because again,
Yeah,
I'm
I've seen that
saying this
picture of
stuff
yours.
like,
Yeah.
but yeah. I was like walking around Hollywood, going to like red carpets, and I'd wear like basically Kiss makeup, or to me, it was like Sting or The Crow makeup on. And they were like, why are you doing this? This is really insane. So it wasn't like one consistent reaction. It's like kind of
Okay.
varied depending on what's going on, right? But like, I mean, for Guardians of Justice, they saw me working on this thing for like 6.5 years. So I think there's like a different level of like, and respect's a weird word. I don't mean like respect as now
Got
they
it. Got it.
respect me. I mean, there's
Because
but there's like a, but
that's
they
kind of
literally
what.
saw me. Sorry, go ahead, buddy.
No, I was saying that's kind of what came across with when I was watching Guardians of Justice. Also, that this must have taken a hell of a lot, long period of time.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and they, yeah, and they, I mean, they know better than, I wouldn't say better than anybody else, but they know just as well as anyone else that I, found the corpse, killed the corpse, dragged it across the mountain up to the top, cooked it. I did all. They saw this kind of happen, so I think this is like oh wow, this guy can execute.
Okay.
On a, this guy can see things through.
So let's talk a little about Guardians of Justice, and what exactly did you want to make when you started with the project? And now that the project is actually out, do you think you have been able to do justice to what was in your head?
Oh my God, that's such a beautiful question. Such a beautiful question. I wanted to do a few things. So one, I wanted to capture what it felt like. I visited America in the like early, like in the mid 90s,
Yeah.
early 90s, early mid 90s.
That comes across.
And I really wanted to like capture what that felt like, right? Like it just felt like, I mean, everything was just so hypercharged and loud and crazy. Even the commercials, like their toy commercials were amazing. You know what I mean? So I really wanted to make something that was not trying to be anything more than like an ode to that.
Okay.
While also kind of writing in how I perceived some of the politics of the American apparatus engine ecosystem.
Yeah.
And kind of infuse that. And then I think that, I keep saying I don't think, I know this. The other thing I was trying to do was also, how do I say this? Really, like, I think B movies are really interesting because there's like aesthetic wise, right? Like in the 1970s, you have like grindhouse movies, and then you have like the home video market in the 80s created like in the 80s and 90s created a whole new slew of these B movies, like ninja movies, or like, the action movies, or like sometimes horror movies. And I find that aesthetic really interesting because it's somehow like the way those movies are made, they're kind of little like kind of sloppily made in air quotes. It makes the thing feel more fun. And A movies sometimes to me feel like very like kind of serious, and they're like kind of self-important.
Yeah.
And I loved that A movies were so self-important. I love that A superhero comic book movies were so self-important. I actually liked that, right? Like I love the Chris Nolan Batman Begins, Dark Knight. Like seeing how seriously Bryan Singer took the X-Men. Like, I thought that stuff was like really cool. But at its core, like the reason I connected with superheroes was because of the cartoons. So I was trying to like tonally mix a cartoon, so make like a live action Saturday morning American cartoon mixed with like a B movie vibe.
Mixed with political satire also.
Yes.
Got
And the
it.
political satire is just like, okay, well, you know, when you go to America and you turn on the news and then
It's
it's
there.
this. It's this. It's just this.
Yeah.
On
So,
some level, it's not even a satire, it's just a documentary.
so you're saying that your primary motivator behind making a project like this was the love for the visual aesthetic that you have followed?
As well, yeah. I think
Okay.
I mean it's a love for all four of
It's a
these
lot of
things,
it's
and
a
then you
lot of
just
things,
kind of
but
like,
okay.
but well, no, it's those four specific things, and then you kind of cross pollinate them, and that's where you get Guardians of Justice, right? You don't. It's not like
Okay. So
yeah.
my question is, when you proposed the project, was it did you have difficulty communicating to the people who were in charge of greenlighting it what it would be?
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah, yeah. I
like
had
how
no
how
like,
how much of a struggle was it to say that
dude.
like I
You
cannot
asked.
imagine. I
Yeah.
honestly I'm asking
No,
because
no,
I
no. It's
cannot imagine how you did it.
yeah. No, I'm dude. I absolutely like it was impossible. It still is impossible, right? Like it's
Yeah,
impossible
yeah,
to
yeah.
describe the show.
Yeah.
Done. Like you watch it and then you're like, okay, now describe some of what you watch. They're like, I don't quite know how. And then you can really only describe it by talking about other things and a lot of other things, right? Dude,
And it's
I
still
had
like
to.
even after watching it, I've seen people with opinions about it. Like many people do get that it's political satire and it has a commitment to the visual aesthetic of the mid 90s, at least American television.
Yeah.
But many people still think this is some kind of a Justice League ripoff. So
Yeah.
that part is very hard to, like, when someone has made up their mind about this being that, it's very hard to tell them otherwise, because it is honestly not. uh, Maybe homage is the word that comes to mind, or
Yeah.
maybe uh, like we were just talking about these posters back here. These are Indian superhero characters which were inspired by
Sure.
American superhero characters, and they're loved a lot in India, and their value does not go down because their origin was like, what I'm trying to say is, do you think there is a difference between a ripoff and something that consciously says, yes, I am inspired by that thing, and I'm turning it into something new?
You know, I think just words and nomenclature don't really make sense, because then it just comes down to, how do you define ripoff? How do I define ripoff? How does someone else define ripoff? Like what is a ripoff? I mean, you know, on some level, like Batman is just a ripoff of the Shadow.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, that's
You know,
exactly what.
right? So like
Superman was inspired by someone, Star Wars was inspired by something, including Flash
sure,
Gordon, stuff like
sure.
that.
And then even when you go like within the purview of the comic book world, like Deathstroke and Deadpool, like Deadpool's a ripoff of Deathstroke. Like, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Like Marvel and DC are constantly like ripping each other off. Like the Marvel universe, go look it up. There's a group called the Supreme Squadron that is like a Batman, Superman. You know what I mean? They're like, it's like the Justice League.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, I just kind of don't care. Like, I'm like, and I think it's kind of fun. Look, there was a version of this where you hide it more. You know, you kind of make them, the characters, more different, but then it becomes harder to comment on it if they're more different.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that movie Vice. Did you see the movie Vice about Dick Cheney?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so there's a great movie called Vice, written and directed by Adam McKay, who awesome director. It's about Dick Cheney's presidency, right? And he like looks like Dick Cheney, like Christian Bale plays Dick Cheney, and he looks like Dick Cheney, right?
Oh yeah, I've heard of it, but I have not seen this.
Yeah, it's a great movie. It's a satire of Dick Cheney, but like if you now all of a sudden have him look like not Dick Cheney, it's actually he looks like Obama, then it's
Mhm.
This is kind of a really silly example I'm giving, but it's like, having it like leaning into the archetype is how I was able to comment on the archetype.
And also there are
Yeah.
things in the show that will not make sense to people who have never read a comic book before in their life.
Like what? I'm not aware of those things because I literally have only like, to me,
Like you
this
cannot
gut, like,
imagine thinking like someone who has never read a comic book.
yes, yes,
That makes sense. That
yes.
makes sense. But I was talking like I would not be able to tell you without spoiling the show for the people who might be watching this. But for example, nope, I would not be able to do so. So let me not do that. But I will just assert without evidence that there are parts of the thing that aesthetically and narratively do not make sense to people who don't know what the Justice League is, or what uh, what being a super fast character means, or what having alter egos means, etc. So in that respect, at least I think the show, it's a superhero show at the end of the day, and it relies on all previous superhero shows that existed in order to create the context within which it exists.
Sure, sure. Again, no different than Scary Movie,
Yes,
building off the back
exactly.
of the Scream, right? Right, because
Yeah,
it's a spoof, it's a parody, it's a
yeah,
satire. Uh,
right.
that was way better than when I compared this movie to Dick Cheney, or my show to Dick Cheney. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
way better.
In the recent past, we have seen a lot of superhero movies where like the traditional template for it has been mostly white characters, and
Mhm.
the expectations also are kind of built on top of that. And
Yes,
ever since there has been more representation in superhero literature and fantasy stuff, including Star Wars and
right.
stuff, there has been
Yeah,
a
yeah.
little bit of a pushback from some people. But do you think, generally speaking, going forward, the trend of having more racial representation in American superhero literature is going to get better, or do you think that it's going to settle at some midway point? Do you think it's gone so too far and it's going to push back
You
a little?
say so. You say gets better. So
Yeah,
you're
because my
making the
motivations are
assumption,
clear. My motivations are
right?
clear.
And you're assuming that I'm on the side of representation.
No, no, I'm not. I'm saying, do you
I'm kidding.
think
I clearly am. I clearly am.
you
That was
clearly
a
am? I'm
joke.
saying, even if
That
you are
was like a
not,
clear.
do you
That was
think
a
it has
joke.
gone so far ahead that it's going to have to be pulled back a little, or do you think this is firmly going in one direction?
No, I don't. Well, I don't think there's two directions.
Okay,
I just don't think there's two directions, right? There isn't just like this or this.
okay,
I think we live in a three-dimensional world, and I think there's a lot of nuance to all of it. Um, and I look, I think the cat's out of the bag. Pandora's box has been opened,
hmm.
so I don't think it's going back to American content just starring all white people. I don't think that's happening. I mean, look, the Ku Klux
Hmm.
Klan might start a streaming service at some point, and if they do, then it might come back for them. But just for them, that would be like an isolated incident.
Okay, but
So yeah, it's. I mean, look, I think maybe it gets like there's like a fine tuning that happens. There's like a fine tuning that happens, because it's like, and like, what do I mean by fine tuning?
that's kind of what the point of the question was. The
Yeah,
fine, like, I wish I had used the
yeah,
phrase fine tuning.
yeah. It's just like, okay, what does this mean? What are we talking about, right?
Hmm.
It's not like, okay, again, I just don't think they're two goalposts. I think there's like an infinite, and it depends on the project. It depends on the genre.
Okay, so
And look, and the bottom line is this: like, most content today is made for streaming services. Streaming services are international, so it's also not necessarily it's not just a social justice movement that happened. It's also driven by like economics.
okay, so
You know,
you mentioned
international casts create like theoretically a broader reach, and also like, yeah.
So I brought the question up because you mentioned that your reasons, one of the reasons behind you making something like Guardians of Justice was your attachment to the superhero or fantasy or comic book entertainment that you consumed in America in the mid 90s,
Yes.
which I'm guessing was not as diverse as it is right now. So in the process of making
Yes.
Guardians of Justice, at what point were you like when you imagined it, you were imagining
Right.
the entertainment you consumed in the 90s, which was not diverse,
Yes.
and yet Guardians of Justice is more diverse than that. So was this a conscious decision, or did you not have to work on it and it came automatically?
Yeah, it was not a conscious decision at all.
Okay.
Like I didn't set out to make a diverse show, and even though it's like very diverse, very, very diverse. And I started this project a very long time ago. So I started it in 2015.
Okay.
So these diversity conversations were not even really happening back then in the way they are now. So like in the context of that, like, it's super diverse, but no, I didn't set out to, market this as a diverse thing. It just kind of came out organically because this is how I see the world.
Okay. Okay.
And also, by the way, like, when I was reading comic books as a kid, I didn't really think about the fact that no one looked like me.
Yeah, it hits you quite late in life. Because even I didn't. Like in recent years, I have become like I grew up reading Indian comic books, right? Like we were just talking about. And they all had Indian names and they worked in Indian cities, even though those Indian cities did not look like any Indian city I've ever been in, like skyscrapers and, futuristic trains and everything. But the fact that they were people who looked like me and had names like me helped a lot. So I don't really have your frame of reference with respect to your childhood, etc.
Yeah, it was weird because
and a lot of Indian superhero stories are inspired by American superhero stories.
Sure.
Yeah.
And like, so when you look at the Indian characters that would pop up in like games or whatever, like they also weren't representative of me.
Okay.
Right. So it's like I wasn't, and I feel like I was such an oddball even when I was a kid because I was like moving around. I was like just different. I was just different. Right? Okay. My brain was wired differently than other kids. So I just assumed going into like any novel, any book, any comic book, any piece of media that like I was not going to see myself represented on screen.
And I remember a conversation by Neil Gaiman about his novel Anansi Boys, where like almost a quarter of the way into the book, you don't realize that the main character is not white. And he was like, I decided not to make it clear for very, obvious reasons. I did not want to, like, if we don't have to point out that a character is white, we should not have to point out that a character is black. That was his logic.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, I look, I hear you. I like lived in Hollywood. I worked in Hollywood and it still continue to exist in Hollywood during the time of like representation and like white being the status quo. I just feel like the conversations like moved so far past all of this, and this really wasn't anything I thought about. Again, this wasn't anything I thought about because to me it wasn't a skin color thing. It was more like a geographic thing.
Okay.
Like I'm not physically from this place, America. There are other Indian people or other people of Indian origin who are from this place, right? So I think just from a stimuli perspective, that was the thing that was first on my mind. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and then I also was like, oh, well, people like me don't do stuff like this. That's, I guess, the second part of it.
That's the second part of it.
But then I remember thinking about this in college. I was like, oh, but that's like an opportunity.
Okay.
I looked at it as an opportunity. I'm like, okay, cool.
Okay. Do you think, like, because you have been someone who has created a number of pieces of work that have been uh, kind of sort of adaptations of comic books or video game properties, do you think the future is bright for this variety of work, or do you think there will come a point where saturation will happen over this? Because if you look at it, almost the entirety of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is adaptations of comic books published by Marvel
Sure,
a number of years ago. So do you think
sure.
we
Yeah.
are anywhere close to a saturation point, or do you think the future for this genre of work is bright?
I think it comes down to how you define the genre. If you're limiting it to superhero stuff, just superheroes, classic superheroes, it's been saturated like a long time ago. I think it got
Okay.
saturated a long time ago because like, Infinity War, Endgame, those weren't superhero movies. Those were like war. Those were like space. One was a space opera. One was a war movie. Um, the Batman. Yeah. So it's like the superhero thing, I think, is saturated. But if you widen the net to just sci-fi, fantasy, like whatever underworld, whatever genre you would call underworld. I don't know what that is, like gothic action.
I think everything
It's kind
falls under the broad umbrella of fantasy.
of nerd or like nerd content. Let's call it nerd culture. Nerd
Okay.
culture. That's a
Okay.
terrible name, but nerd culture. That's only growing, right? Like when you look at like gaming for young people today is not like a question. Oh, do you game or do you not go game? They all play games. All of them. In fact, they meet their friends in games.
Okay.
They like socialize through gaming, right? And gaming, almost all games exist in some sort of fantasy sphere.
Okay.
So, so I'm saying young kids, young people, they're being indoctrinated into fantasy in a way that like generations of past didn't like. Just that like generations of past simply didn't even get access to. Does that make sense? So like,
Got it. Yeah. It does.
yeah. So they're growing up with like fantasy, and so like when they start engaging with like storytelling as adults, like it's gonna have to be built off the back of this, like, and not to mention we're looking at a world like that is basically becoming more and more sci-fi by the minute. I mean, it felt sci-fi 5 years ago, and now we're looking at like, a metaverse, cryptocurrency, like all of it. It's all insane. It's all out of we're living in a Paul Verhoeven classic.
Yeah.
So, so our world is already a fantasy. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
like, I don't know if like the fantasy genre then really is able to hit saturation because it's just molded our reality to the point where like we are the fantasy genre. So if you're telling a human story in 5 years, well, I'm sorry to break it to you, but you've set it in a sci-fi fantasy dystopia.
That actually is an interesting point, and it gives rise to a question that I had not previously thought of, which is, do you think increasingly we are going to have difficulty imagining the future? Because
No.
in the 90s, when we were imagining the future,
Yeah.
we were imagining certain things that have still not become reality, like flying cars, display monitors everywhere, 3D printing, etc.
Right.
Since a
Right.
lot of these things have become everyday objects now, with the possible exception of flying cars, when I look at science fiction of today, there appears to be a lack of detail when we are imagining the future. Like sliding doors is not the future because we already have it. Floating displays are not the future because we kind of already have them. Do you think
Yeah. I hear you.
there is a lack of imagination with respect to when we are imagining the future? Like we don't know what the future is going to be like?
Well, I don't know if it's like we don't know what the future is going to be like. There's definitely like an uncertainty on how certain things play out, and I think when increasingly when authors are imagining the future, it starts feeling very apocalyptic. It just immediately turns into an apocalyptic story, right? Because and I think that's very like representative of our times. That's a sign of our times. No, man, I think it's more complicated than that. When in the 90s, the reason sci-fi was so accurate was it was just extrapolating. Okay, we have these things called computers. We have this thing called the internet. Imagine computers get really small and the internet gets really fast. Okay, and then imagine, and it's like sci-fi was built, has always, like sci-fi has usually been built off of the trends of like what was going on at the time. And then like, science fiction, so much of it in the 20th century was extrapolating from the Industrial Revolution and then the computing revolution.
Yeah.
Well, like, what are the next three revolutions? Well, one is probably some sort of nano revolution, nanotech, right? And again, I hit the pause button real quick, man. Like when I mean, like when I'm in this example, like just to hit the pause button real quick, like there's science fiction like The Expanse, which explores the human condition through our impulses and like, okay, well, this is what a future could look like. So we have that.
Yeah.
We have a lot of that. There's Altered Carbon is another great example of this. So we have countless like really hard sci-fi books. But back to the earlier point I was making, like, I lost my train of thought.
Nano, like one of the
right,
things that is
totally
going to be real is nanotech.
Yeah, like it's like, okay, so nanotech completely changes the game. And once people really understand a little bit of what's possible with nanotech, then all of a sudden you can go like, okay, what will the future look like with this technology, right? If something like teleportation comes into existence, okay, cool. Well, what does that do, right? Like you're like, okay, well, teleportation is awesome. Is it like everyone has a watch and you like press a button and you can teleport anywhere you want? Is it like one portal that, everyone goes, so it's like a train station now, like, and only like the super ultra rich have a portal in their house or in like, like, and then you go, okay, well, like, and then, so once what teleportation technology is going to look like, a little bit of it, then you can extrapolate more, right? Then you go, okay, well, wow. Once teleportation comes to fruition, it's going to destroy the housing market because location won't matter anymore. So it's like the housing prices are going to go like way down because
also somebody pointed out that it will solve the population problem because people will not have to live next to where they work. So the population concentration problem will go away. One can live on top of a mountain and still commute to work in Mumbai every single day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also, like, why would you necessarily go to Mumbai to work, right? Because if you're McDonald's now, why do you need all those locations? You just buy an island. That's McDonald's Island. People are either teleporting into there or your employees are teleporting out to deliver. And it's not even employees at that point, it's just drones, right? So it's really what it's saving you is drone charging cost.
Yeah, that's an interesting futuristic vision. So before I go any further, I'll just thank you for doing this. And like, I really appreciate you taking the time out to talk with me about all these things. My last question before I go would be, if you had not been in this line of work, what line of work would you be in?
By the way, before I answer that, like, I'm a huge fan of yours, man. I've said this to you, like DM'd you. I just think you're brilliant. You're a visionary, you're a thinker, you're like a salt of the earth, just like a genuine dude. I not just appreciate that I know you, that we know each other, but I just appreciate that you exist. You know what I mean? Your mere existence gives me hope. You know what I mean?
Thank
you. The amount of, you're just great. You're just great.
Yeah, I also wanted to like in a general way, thank you for reaching out so many times as you have. Like, we have chatted on Instagram so many times in response to a post I made or something. It's rare to find people whose hearts are in the right place and who are not pretending to be something that they're not. So I appreciate you as much as you do.
Oh, appreciate that, man. Thank you. I receive the compliment. I received the compliment.
Thank you.
So if I wasn't in this line of work, if I wasn't like and what if we define this line of work being like artists, just general artists, are you saying like film, TV
No, if you're not a
kind of thing?
storyteller, if you're not a filmmaker, what would you be? Still in the entertainment industry?
Well, I feel like entertainment industry is like all storytellers. So if I'm not a
Yeah.
storyteller, then I'm just not in the entertainment industry.
Okay. So if you're not a
Uh,
storyteller, what would you be?
well, I'd be unhappy first and foremost, very unhappy. So I'd be very unhappy. That might even be my identity. You know, how you meet someone and you're like, that guy's unhappy. You know what I
Professionally
mean?
unhappy.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like there's always a character in a movie. You know, you're like an extra. You're in a subway. You have all the different characters. You have like the guy with the briefcase of starting to work. You have the kid who's skipping school. You have the mom with groceries, and then you have the one guy who's sitting on the thing. You're like, that's the unhappy guy.
Hmm.
I would not be him. I would hope.
But
You know, like look, there are so many things that I wanted to do that I will never get the chance to do just simply because I was also acutely aware that you just have to hyper focus on something to achieve to like achieve anything or get something done. And you know, once the movie thing started working, the movie, TV, anime career started working, I just hyper committed, and I hyper committed because I like have to. I was like, I can't do this 50%. I can't even do this 85%.
that's true.
Had it not worked out, like I would have probably tried stand up comedy because why not?
Yeah.
Definitely tried music. I definitely tried music. You know, I like. I think I look and kind of behave like someone who's in a band already. You know what I mean? so definitely music. You know, I could also see like a parallel universe where I did something in the tech sphere,
Okay.
like maybe
Okay.
like a tech founder person. Um, yeah, uh, yeah, yeah.
So that's
There's like an
actually kind of what I was
alternative.
trying to visualize, a parallel universe where you're not a,
Yeah,
like maybe you're wearing formals, going to work and stuff.
I don't know. Like, here's the thing. Actually talked. I was having this conversation earlier tonight.
Okay.
I in my 20s, I had such a problem with authority figures,
Hmm.
a boss, like someone telling me what to do. Um, I just wanted to be my own person so badly that I don't think there's any way I would have lasted in a company, you know, wearing formals, being told what to wear, or told what to do. I don't. I'd be able to do it today, uh, you know,
Yeah, that's kind of what happened to
but
me
in my
also.
20s, yeah,
Yeah. Like this problem with authority where my time is not my time, you know,
right,
if that
right,
makes sense. Like I want my
totally.
time to be my time. If I want to take a nap in the middle of the day, I will do it. If I want to stay up all night and write, I will do it. And my day should not be decided by someone else. That was the general idea.
100%. And you
Yeah.
have like zero agency or say over it. That's
Yeah.
fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And like, here's another weird thing. Not, I don't mean, this is not even weird. I'm saying weird. This is not weird. This is normal.
Hmm.
Um, I like to go to bed at 4 in the morning because I have all the best ideas between 10 p.m. and 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
I don't want to wake up at 8 in the morning. Like I don't, you know, like, and I think when I was younger, I kind of felt bad about it. I was like, oh man, like, oh, I wish I was one of those guys that woke up at 6 a.m. and went for a jog and then met people for breakfast and out
Hmm.
and, you know, and like lived one of those lives. And I hit a point a few years ago. So I'm like 37 now. So I think it was like, I was like, wait, like this works for me. like I've had a lot of success as someone with this schedule. Like I don't know that I'd have any more of it if I woke up at 6 a.m. and went for a run. Like I don't, it's like I'm programmed a certain way, and I don't like things that kind of force me to go against my programming.
Yeah.
At its core. And maybe it's not programming, it's how I'm wired, against my wiring. Wiring is a better word.
Yeah.
Not programming.
And the one of the problems that I usually run into is that having to explain this to someone who does not have this core or programming. Like a lot of people have shaped their life according to rules set, as in you must wake up at this time, you must sleep at this time, vagara vagara, and you if you don't do this, it is unhealthy or wrong somehow. And a huge part of the problem is trying to explain to them that I am not you. That if people don't get it.
Dude, I know, I totally feel you on that. I feel like one of the things that has helped me kind of come to terms with this stuff is like, again, the rise of tech, so to speak. Because tech, all of a sudden, like those guys all have alternate lifestyles, and they're on some sort of, sometimes it's a fad, a lot of times it's fads, but and that's what's one. And then two, just experiencing other cultures, you realize there are some hard and fast core human things going on, but a lot of it's just cultural programming. It's like, okay, what did the person who controls the TV station like program that TV station to say to you and your family when you were growing up? Like,
in a way they did. Like a lot of habits that our families think are natural or healthy were programmed into them through mass media.
Not a lot, all of them, every single
all of it,
one
almost all of it. Yeah.
Like, what country are you from?
India.
India doesn't exist, dude. It's a construct. It's like a construct. India doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like
the borders were created by human beings is what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like a bird doesn't fly into India and go, oh, I'm in India now. Look, this is the thing. These are all stories were made up about like who we are. It's all a construct, and it's a fun story. I dig the story, man. I think it's cool. I'm like, yeah, and I'm from there. They built this, and then we did this. But like, at a certain on another level, I'm like, this is a made up story. I mean, not made up story. It's a construct.
Yeah.
It's a story to keep us safe.
It's a fiction. Yeah.
Yeah, to keep us safe.
It's a fiction, like any god or any religion is.
Yeah.
We made up ideas to make life more, to make life make sense.
Right. And then culture is just a mass delusion then, because, like,
agreed upon
what is this? Right.
Like a currency note, like it's a piece of paper that you and I both agree has a certain amount of value. And if we don't agree, then it doesn't work.
Right. But what's interesting about the currency note is you can like reject the currency note. What's weird about mass media programming is like, if they're like, hey, you will know who this person is, and this is what you will know about them. These are the 10 facts that you will know about this person, to, like, it's in your face. It's in your face.
Yeah. Right.
You can't drive the car without, oh, that's that dude on a billboard. Oh, there's this really interesting bright screen in front of me. Oh, that's that person again. You know what I mean? Like it's in the, so mass media programming is just, it's way more intense. And like, I mean, on some level, it's fake memories. You know what I mean? Does that make sense when I say that? It's fake memories, right? Because you're like,
in fact, this is kind of sort of what you explored in Guardians of Justice also. Like this whole idea that these people are heroes is programmed through mass media.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally. Because that was the whole thing with my monologue. I'm like, and when I gave the monologue,
I don't want
Lex
anyone
Luthor
selling
wrote
me
it.
an ideology.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And it's just a narrative. It's like a narrative that you construct about all of it. And what's beautiful about the human experience and also really terrifying is like it's all a story. All of it, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Your name, who you are. It's a story. It's also terrifying.
That's a great note to end this on. That's so terrifying. Thank you, Adi Shankar, for doing this. And I hope that Guardians of Justice comes back sometime soon, because that is like it has ended on a note where the Earth is about to face a great threat.
Which he imagined.
Sorry?
Which he imagined.
Which he imagined? Yeah.
Possibly. Yeah, no, I think, I don't know if I can like make more because it's just so laborious and I'm so busy.
Okay.
But yeah,
like it did seem like it was an open-ended ending, and even if it does not go any further than that, I think the point has been made. Like whatever message you want to send out, the point has been made.
Yeah. And I think there's something, thank you, I appreciate that. I think there's something like subversive or interesting about like not trying to like do the sequel and then this and then this exactly. And the spin-off of like the Awesome Man spin-off. You're like, oh my God. You're turning the thing that's making fun of the thing into the thing.
Yeah. No, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
If the seed itself was subversion, then there could possibly be nothing more subversive than not following it down that same path.
Exactly.
Great.
So if I do that, it might just be like in a comic books, like a comic book format or something like that, where you just kind of keep it going. Like, all right, cool. If you guys want to follow along, here's the story. Here's where it goes.
Okay. So great. Thank you for doing this. And this has been a lot of pleasure. Thank you for taking the time out and talking with us.
So much fun, man. Dude, I love this. Thank you, buddy. You have a wonderful day. And
yep, you too. Bye-bye.